The Treaty of Portsmouth, known for ending World War I, was celebrated for bringing peace to the East. But was it truly a treaty of peace, or did it lead to more conflicts than it ended? In the Eastern Hemisphere, European powers had begun to take control of China's economy through unequal or unfair treaties, weakening China's hold on its territories. At the same time, a small country on the edge of the Pacific was beginning to grow. In the late 1800s, Japan, a former agricultural society, was inspired by Western technology and implemented widespread military reform, beginning with the conscription and importation of Western firearms. This was the Meiji Restoration, a period of rapid industrialization that paved the way for consecutive Japanese victories in East Asia. Despite Japan's victory against China in the Sino-Japanese War, many countries still did not recognize their growing power. In the Triple Intervention of 1895, European countries coerced Japan to return the strategic Liaodong Peninsula to China, and the offense would not be forgotten. Meanwhile, in the north, Russia had its own problems. Russia's coasts were completely frozen, making the empire desperate for a warm water port to expand its trade. Additionally, the wave of the Industrial Revolution made cities overcrowded, and the financial effects of the Crimean War further deteriorated Russian living conditions. As both Japan and Russia grew, the Japanese felt threatened by Russia's growing encroachment. Consequently, Japan, seeking an agreement with their northern neighbors, asked the Russians for a treaty over control of Korea and Manchuria, but the Russians declined, with the autocratic Tsar Nicholas stating,
"I don't want Korea for myself, but neither can I countenance the Japanese set foot there. Were they to do this, it would be a casus belli for Russia. Russia can never accept this."
Japan continued to negotiate, but Tsar Nicholas II refused to acknowledge these requests in favor of enjoying his fall holiday abroad, saying,
"There will be no war because I do not wish it."
Without warning, the Japanese Admiral Togo Heiichiro launched a torpedo attack on the Russian Navy station in Port Arthur on February 8, 1904, an important seaport on the coast of Manchuria. The Japanese attack sank major Russian ships, including the Tsarevich, Regetsbizan, and Pallada ships. The Russian Tsar received the Japanese declaration of war only hours later. The Russo-Japanese War had erupted and would later be known as World War I. In the height of the Russo-Japanese War, people were dying by the thousands. Russia's decline was imminent, and Japan was exhausted. After the Battle of Mukden and Tsushima, the Russians, too proud to admit defeat, left Japan to seek foreign solutions. Since most of Europe had already picked sides, Japan had to look farther, across the Pacific, to the United States of America. The war's intensity only simmered down thanks to the signing of a treaty, the Treaty of Portsmouth, an agreement that transformed history's trajectory. August 8, 1905, 4 diplomats disembarked from their ships in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. In the next month, these diplomats' negotiations would put an end to the Russo-Japanese War, materializing to the 1,994 words that would alter the course of modern history. The negotiations for the treaty commenced on August 9. During these negotiations, Russia wanted to keep the Sakhalin Islands and their naval fleet in the Pacific Ocean. On the other hand, Japan also wanted the Sakhalin Islands, as well as payment from Russia. In order to try and appease both sides, Roosevelt suggested that Russia turn the Sakhalin Islands over to Japan and later buy the islands back. With this suggestion, Japan and Russia would both get what they wanted: Russia their territory and Japan their payment. However, Russia dismissed Roosevelt's idea, not wanting to pay a single cent as it was severely in debt from the war. After more debate on September 5, 1905, Komura Jutaro, Theodore Roosevelt, and Sergei Witt finally led the conference to sign the Treaty of Portsmouth, defining territorial boundaries. As part of the treaty's terms, Japan reluctantly agreed to take the southern part of the Sakhalin Islands with no payment from Russia. In addition, Russia had to acknowledge that Korea and southern Manchuria were under Japanese rule. Due to the fact that neither Russia nor Japan could financially continue the war, both were forced to agree to the treaty's terms. In the end, Japan gained the most out of this war, leaving Russia with only the northern half of the Sakhalin Islands. Despite the signing of the document, neither side was completely satisfied with the terms, leading to riots for both countries. Specifically, in Japan, the Hibiya riots erupted in Tokyo, with citizens in outrage about the lack of payment from Russia. Meanwhile, the people in Russia were upset due to the loss of the southern half of the Sakhalin Islands. This agitation in Russia left the people angry with Tsar Nicholas II, fueling political arguments and the subsequent Russian Revolution of 1905. Japan was previously weak and overshadowed by China. However, the Japanese victory, achieved through the Treaty of Portsmouth, increased the country's nationalism. This sense of pride, as well as Japan's need for resources, fueled Japan's imperialistic mission. Later on, Japanese Prime Minister Tanaka Gichi went as far as to say,
In order to take over the world, you need to take over Asia. Japan's goals of conquest should be conquest of Manchuria, conquest of China, conquest of the Soviet Union or Siberia, establishment of bases in the Pacific, conquest of the United States.
Japan intended for complete global domination, which threatened the rest of the world. Furthermore, the Treaty of Portsmouth gave Japan the legal power to take over Korea and southern Manchuria. Under Japanese rule, Koreans had to endure poor working conditions, an absence of basic human rights such as free speech, and forced assimilation through a Japanese-controlled school system. After losing World War II, the Japanese had to give up Korea, which resulted in a power vacuum in the weakened peninsula. The Soviet Union and the US immediately vied for influence in the region, placing Korea into an international trusteeship. However, existing tensions soon erupted into the Korean War between the Communist North and Capitalist South. This was the first major Cold War hotspot, and to this day, the war has never officially ended, permanently dividing the Korean peninsula. Throughout history, Japan had wanted China's land in order to gain access to resources that are difficult to acquire from the Japanese archipelago. The Treaty of Portsmouth gave Japan control of southern Manchuria, providing them even more reasons for Japan to eventually invade the rest of Manchuria in 1931. This invasion not only allowed Japan to set up a so-called autonomous puppet state in Manchuria by the name of Manchukuo, but was also the start of World War II in the Pacific. Centuries of Russian expansion ended with an embarrassing defeat against Japan through the Treaty of Portsmouth. Russia gained nothing from the war, which caused educated Russians to believe development was being hindered by the government. This unrest catalyzed the 1905 Russian Revolution, when workers went on strike to protest the Romanov monarchy. Now, it was not a matter of if, but rather when the previously limitless Russian Empire would plummet into anarchy. In the long term, the Treaty of Portsmouth set the groundwork for the rise of the Bolshevik communist revolutionaries led by Vladimir Lenin in 1917, and the establishment of a socialist state that would profoundly shape the course of 20th century history. The Treaty of Portsmouth soured good rapport between the US and both Russia and Japan. Despite winning the Russo-Japanese War, Japan felt the treaty cheated them of the land they deserved. This treaty would be the last instance of US-Japanese cooperation for over 40 years. Additionally, Americans saw the Japanese military as a true threat and grew wary of Japan's increasing imperial conquests as they inched into Chinese territory. Japan's expansionist agenda, propelled by the Treaty of Portsmouth, led to its position against Western powers in World War II and their attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. Russia was also displeased with the US because they gained little from the treaty, which initiated an era of distrust towards American intervention in foreign affairs. Continued tensions between Russia and America can be seen throughout history, from the country's rivalry in the Cold War to Russia's modern-day opposition towards Western-led UN policies, and even the US's condemnation of the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. The Treaty of Portsmouth, while resolving the Russo-Japanese conflict, ultimately sowed seeds of discord, highlighting the Russian Empire's decline and Japan's emergence as a formidable global power. The Treaty of Portsmouth played a key role in shaping global politics as we know it, and set the stage for another era of tensions and conflicts.